Hello everyone and welcome back to our third and final video in my Star Trek Doppelgangers series. Last time we left off with DS9, where our total was at 73. So now let's move on into Voyager and the following series. We'll start out with Season 2, Episode 3, Projections, which involves a holodeck malfunction. Typically I do not include holodeck recreations in my doppelganger count. However, this was an unusual situation wherein apparently an image of Reginald Barclay appears, and for much of the episode we were not sure if this is an image of the real Barclay or just some kind of malfunction in the holodeck, which of course that's what it turns out to be in the end. Season 2, Episode 18, Death Wish. During the trial of the Q, later known as Quinn, Q creates a duplicate of himself so he can call himself to testify. It's also a good excuse for a double facepalm. Season 2, Episode 21, Deadlock. A subspace divergence field causes a duplicate of the entire ship. However, similar to my reasoning for the Mirror Universe, I'm only counting this as two doppelgangers, since it is Harry Kim and the infant Naomi Wildman who crossed from one Voyager to the other to replace their duplicates who were killed. Or died, as the case may be. Season 3, Episode 15, Coda. After a shuttle crash, Janeway has a vision of what appears to be the spirit of her late father, who is trying to convince her to join him in the afterlife, but naturally it turns out to be not what it seems. It is in fact an alien parasite. Season 4, Episode 24, Demon. A biomimetic life form known as the Silverblood duplicates Tom Paris and Harry Kim. At the end of the episode, an agreement was made between Voyager and this life form to duplicate the entire crew, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Before that, we have Season 5, Episode 4, In the Flesh. Species 8472 has created a replica of Starfleet headquarters and have learned to take the form of humans and other races from the Alpha Quadrant. And their apparent leader has assumed the specific form of Boothby, the well-known Academy groundskeeper. In Season 5, Episode 18, Course Oblivion, we get back to the silver blood duplicates we left earlier, although we don't know this at first. And while I typically don't want the total to grow this out of hand, since that we see the duplicate crew of Voyager for almost the entire episode, I have to count the entire crew as doppelgangers in this case. I come up with a total of 145. And by the way, this total for this specific crew complement of Voyager at this time period comes from the site Ex Astra Scientia that I've mentioned before. I'll be including a link in the description to a blow-by-blow breakdown of the Voyager crew numbers during her entire travels through the Delta Quadrant. Moving on to the final season of Voyager, Episode 24, Renaissance Man. The EMH is forced to impersonate several members of the crew, including Captain Janeway, Chakotay, and B'Elanna Torres, as part of a plan to save Captain Janeway, the real one, who is being held hostage. Also, at one point, he creates multiple duplicates of himself in the holodeck you can see here to stymie Tuvok, who's trying to apprehend him. From here, we'll move on to Enterprise, where there are very few examples of doppelgangers. And in fact, the first one is a bit of a stretch based on my normal qualifications. A shape-shifting species known as the Wraith takes the form of the Glimmering Girl, which is a character in a poem that Captain Archer was familiar with as a child. Well, technically, she's not taking the form of a real person. However, since Captain Archer's memory of her was so vivid, I decided to include it on the list, since he essentially considered her to be real. Season 3, Episode 10, Similitude, a little bit more of a clear-cut case when Commander Tucker is seriously injured and requires a transplant of brain tissue. Dr. Phlox uses a strange creature he has in his collection called a mimetic symbiote to essentially create a clone of Trip so that he can harvest the necessary tissue from this symbiote, who has a lifespan of only 15 days. Wrapping up our brief trip through Enterprise, we have Season 4, Episode 2, which is Stormfront Part 2, where the recurring adversary Silik, who is a Suliban and a shapeshifter, briefly takes the form of, once again, Commander Tucker before he is discovered. From there, we'll move on to the next show, Star Trek Picard, where we have a lot of androids and holograms running around. In the first episode, Remembrance, we see the twin androids Daj and Soji. We'll be seeing some more of them later on, or at least their relatives. Over the course of the season, we also see that the La Serena is equipped with several emergency holograms, 5 at least. And in episode 8, we see them all gathered together here in the holographic representation of Picard's office. In the final 2 episodes of Season 1, at In Arcadia Ego, we see many more of the twin androids, although they are referred to as synths in this show. We see Soji and another one of her twins named Sutra. Also, we see many unnamed duplicates. However, I will be counting the other ones that we do see a name for, which are referred to as Arcana and Saga. Finally, also in the last episode of Picard Season 1, Jean-Luc himself dies, but his consciousness is transferred into a golem. So going on from this point, Picard himself is an android doppelganger. And to wrap things up, just a few examples from Lower Decks. Season 1, Episode 2, Envoys. On Telgana 4, some of the crew come across what seems to be an Andorian elder, but it turns out to actually be a Vendorian shapeshifter, the species we last saw in the animated series. Also in Season 1, Episode 5, Cupid's Errant Arrow, Mariner has a very unpleasant flashback to when her friend Nico turns out to be a Harvonian shapechanger, who then in turn devours her other friend. And that wraps up our trip through the Star Trek franchise. Let's take a look at our final scores from the original series, including the animated series and the TOS films. We have 27. Next Generation, including the films, 13. Deep Space Nine, 33. Several Changelings and Mirror Universe episodes there to help round out that count. 156 from Voyager, although most of that comes from one occasion when the crew was duplicated by the Silverblood. If you take that out, there's only about 10 examples. 3 from Enterprise, 9 from Picard, and 2 from Lower Decks. Now that about covers it for now, at least until some new seasons of Star Trek come out, in which case we might need an addendum to this count. But in the meantime, I thank you for joining me throughout this series. If you have any comments about things I should or should not have included, or ideas for where I should go next, please feel free to leave them in the comments. In the meantime, I hope you have a blessed day.